Okay, you've passed due diligence and you have made the strategic decision that this is a deal you fully intend to do. You want to add this into your portfolio. This is going to support your journey as an investpreneur. It aligns well with your vision, purpose, mission. You're going to be able to integrate it with your objective, strategy, actions, and you're going to be able to get yourself to where you want to be by owning this asset. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Now you actually have to get into the deal so that you can make that happen to then be able to get the deal done. In order to do that, you're going to now enter into a purchase agreement. The purchase agreement is a legally binding agreement. This is the contract. This is the deal itself. Highly suggest at this point in time that you're going to be bringing in your deal team and you're going to be bringing in legal advice to be able to do this agreement, right? Either party ultimately can draft it, either party can create it. I highly suggest that if you're a buyer and you're a strategic buyer, that it's your side that is bringing the purchase agreement to the table. You're going to want to have your attorney involved into this. This is where folks, this is ultimately like where they're worth their salt. This is where they're earning their bread. This is how they're bringing the value, because this is the itemization of the deal. Everything inside of this agreement is ultimately what is the deal, right? And if you end up moving forward and you exchange money for assets that are not itemized, or you're getting into a deal that you think is the case, but it's not itemized and it's not addressed appropriately and successfully inside this purchase agreement, and you end up shelling out money, again, buyer beware. That is how risk is created in these deals for buyers. It also, I mean, goes the same side as for sellers as well. You want to be very clear as a seller in terms of what it is that you're transferring over. You want to be very clear in a seller in terms of what your obligations are to the deal, right? This is where it all gets baked out. And these purchase agreements can be very complicated. I mean, this could be 100-page plus document. Depends on the deal. Could be hundreds of pages depending on the deal. Again, I mean, we like to do simple deals always, but again, when it comes to the purchase agreement, you want it to be really buttoned up pretty well, right? All the financial terms of the transaction are going to be well identified in terms of this agreement. There are going to be so like the concept of if you're, however you're financing the deal, right? So what is the purchase price going to be? How are you financing the deal? If you're negotiating any sort of seller financing, that's going to be broken out. What are the payment terms going to be? Like what is the time and type of payment that's going to be made? That's what I mean by payment terms. Is there going to be a deposit that's going into it? How are we dealing with escrow? Um, you know, Literally everything that gets associated with how this deal is getting done in terms of monies being exchanged for the asset. You want it to be identified in writing and super clear and addressable and referenceable, right? This is how you button things up, make sure that there's, again, good, clear communication. The best way to do that is in a written agreement that's super clear, black and white. Once you get the financing done, once you get the money done, right, what the transaction is going to look like, then you're going to want to actually have a very good, clean description of what you're buying, right? This is how we're buying it, but what are we buying? And you're, again, going to want to be extremely detailed and extremely buttoned up on this, right? So that could be any sort of specificity of any asset that's associated with this deal. Uh, you're talking like names, right? IP. You're talking about copyrights. You're talking about any strategic suppliers or vendors or partners or transfer of technology, trademarks, trade names, intellectual property of any sort. Uh, Literally, all of it needs to be identified, itemized, and included in this purchase agreement. If it's not included in this purchase agreement, then it's not a part of this purchase. Right? So when in doubt, don't leave any doubt. Get it in there. Uh, you're also going to want to make sure that it's very clear what is also included inside of this transaction, and if there's any other sorts of liabilities or anything like that that's going to be coming with it, and or if there's not any sort of liabilities, you're going to want to be able to disclose that from both the buy and the sell side, right? So for example, the seller may say that this is all, this is an as is type of transaction. Uh, on the same side, there may be contingencies from the buyer in terms of, in the due diligence process, when we identified that this is, these buckets of risk, and this is something that needs to be done by the seller prior to transfer, that type of stuff is going to want to be included in here as well. Um, you're going to want to have all of the warranties, all the representations, all the contingencies, right? So you're going to want to make sure that it's clear that the seller is really the owner of the business, and that they're able to do to do this transaction, uh, that they have the ability to do the transaction, right? So that they actually have the right to do the transaction. That there's nothing that, would be baggage tied to this deal that hasn't been disclosed, right? So you're going to want to make sure that that's the case, and it's going to be, added in this, so that, there's, legal responsibility tied to that. Same with taxes, same with any sort of, regulatory issues. Um, Anything realistically, any sort of inspections, or any sort of potential risks that may not have been disclosed, you're going to want to be, as a buyer, in a position where you're putting the seller to have to force to disclose, right? um, any sort of contingencies, so maybe, you can't, you know secure financing. What happens if you can't secure financing? um, you're going to want to be able to break in the contingencies of that, and what different types of, optionalities ends up taking place, if and when any of these things happening. um, you're going to want to make sure that all the documents and transfers are in place. You're going to want to be able to outline, what's required in terms of getting into the closing, right? So next step after we do the purchase agreement, which again is going to itemize absolutely everything, right? That allows this, deal to move down the line. Uh, you're going to then get into We're going to jump into, payment terms, which is actually you closing the financing. So again, you're going to want to itemize what happens if that doesn't happen. It can't happen. You may end up including optionalities. There may be penalties based off of time frames, and things of that nature, to be able to keep the deal alive. Again, this is why you want an attorney involved with this, because they'll be able to provide you, again, for your deal, what makes sense. And every deal is unique. So again, this is just a very general, 20,000-foot overview of a purchase agreement, not intentionally trying to make it uh, too general, because the reality is this is an area, again, where you want to get into the specificity. But once you close this purchase agreement and you feel confident with it, and your deal team feels confident with it, this literally is what lays the foundation for everything else to be closed. You're going to get your financing done. You're going to complete your closing diligence. You're going to get into the transfer. All of those things, all the remaining things that allow you to take possession of this deal, you're going to want to be laid out inside of this purchase agreement. You're going to want to have all your ducks in a row, right? If you want the seller to not be able to compete with you, right? So you're buying an asset from this individual. This individual clearly built the asset. They clearly know what this market is, and they clearly have some level of experience and expertise inside of it. You may not want them to be a potential competitor for a period of time. You know, if that's the case, then you're going to want to make sure that you're, in this, prohibiting them, through a non-competition, non-compete, or non-solicitation, right, covenant, so that they can't pull your customers away once you acquire them, in this transaction. Um, you may want to have the fact that they're going to retain on for advice in some sort of transition. That's going to want to be outlined. Again, all of the things that are relevant and pertinent to the deal, to be able to make you comfortable in this buy. And that's probably the best way to approach this. Is I would, as a buyer, just literally lay it all out on the line of everything that you need to be able to feel comfortable trading this amount of money at these terms in order to do this deal. That's what you're going to want to include inside the purchase agreement. That's probably actually the best way to frame it. And then get legal advice in terms of how to accomplish that. Then it's going to be up to the seller to make sure that they accept it. And then at some point in time, you guys are going to either have to come to terms or you can't. Hopefully, you're able to come to terms and you both execute and you enter into this purchase agreement. And then that's when we jump into the next section, which is going to be kind of like the last real uh, I don't want to say hurdle to overcome, but it's when that it's the next thing that you need to take action on as the buyer, which is the financing. All right, let's get into it.